All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For this conversation, I'm really excited to be joined by somebody whose band I first saw live when I was in eighth grade. So
Wow.
about 35 years ago, and I've been following this band ever since. It's my honor to welcome Danny from Biohazard. Danny, how's it
Hey,
going?
it's going good, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to see you. We've got a lot to talk about, man. The big thing on the top of the list right now is for the first time in 13 years, there's a new
Hmm.
Biohazard album. It's
Yep.
called Provided We Fall, comes out October 17th. Like I said, first record in 13 years for you guys, and significantly, the classic lineup is back. It's yourself,
Yes.
Evan, Bobby, Billy. So it's been 13 years. You guys are back together with this lineup. Just to give the viewer some information, the album is produced by Matt Hyde, who's definitely been around. We're talking, Slayer, Hatebreed, Deftones. And I want to hit you up with this first and foremost because I was really excited to see a buddy of mine and somebody who's been on this podcast too, Phil Cavano,
Yeah.
some involvement with this. So tell me a little bit about how Phil got involved.
Well, like you said, Matt Hyde is producing the record. He came out here to New Jersey to meet with us and pretty much like left it up to us to like find some place to record. I suggested a studio that I use all the time in Long Branch, New Jersey, called Shorefire.
Mhm.
Shorefire Studios. Been there a long time. The guy who owns it is Joe DeMeo. He's a great engineer. Great producer in his own right. I suggested we record there because it was kind of like, I mean, it's close to where I live. It's not, it's 20 minutes from my house. Um, I just thought it was like a good location for us all to get together. The way the room is there is like a big live room, and we like to record all together in the room. So it was a studio that was going to work. Phil Cavano is I mean, anybody who knows like the New York, New Jersey scene knows Phil. He's been around in a lot of bands. He plays guitar for Monster Magnet currently. He was in a band called Blitzbeer years ago, which is how we met him back in the day. Phil's just a great guy that we've always known, and he's like a studio engineer. He works with Joe at Surefire a lot on a lot of different projects. And when we were coming in to do um, our new record there, Joe suggested bringing in Phil to kind of help us out with like guitars and like getting sounds and gear and stuff like that. So Phil played a really important role when we were doing tracking Bobby's guitars, especially um, at Shorefire, because we did all Bobby's stuff, all the guitars, overdubs, his solos, and everything there in the room. And Phil was there to help us out with gear and help get sounds, and it was just a great vibe having like a friend of ours there who's like really creative and good energy and everything. So we love Phil. Phil's great.
Yeah,
And
right on.
now he plays guitar at Murphy's Law,
Yeah, I
and
saw
they're
that.
doing great. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
yeah, Phil's the man for sure. So
Yeah, he's
I was
great.
really happy to see that on the info I received. Um, I know you've put out a couple of songs already, giving fans a taste of what this record is, but
Yeah.
I have the whole thing here, and I'll tell you, it's probably, if not the heaviest album you've done, it's certainly up there with the heaviest records you've done. And
Cool.
what I love about it is it sounds like a Biohazard record, but it kind of doesn't.
Mm.
Let me take a walk to a question here.
Right.
I mean, it would have been awesome if you guys came out after all this time with a record that sounded like the Maze album or Urban Discipline. That would have been awesome, but we've heard those records already.
Yeah.
What I hear on this new record is a hell of a lot of progression musically. There's definitely some new areas being explored. So you're also a band that's a good 35 years into this, if not even more than that. So
Hmm.
when you guys got the songs together for this record, was it a matter of kind of stating up front you wanted to do things a little bit different, or was it just a result of being who you are at this stage of life where obviously the music was going to be different because you're different people 35 years later?
Well, going back to the idea of Biohazard making a new record, when the band got back together, the idea wasn't really to make a new record. Like that was kind of for me personally, that was like the last thing on my mind. Like I wasn't super excited about making a new Biohazard record. I just wasn't. Um, I just didn't think that the four of us would be on the same page in terms of what kind of music we would want to do, what kind of what direction it would go in. We got the band got back together. We started playing shows. We did a lot of shows. We did a bunch of touring. It was all really successful and fun, and we had a great time. And it definitely was starting to feel like the old days of the band, so to speak. It was like a good vibe. Everybody was positive. Everybody's getting along. Um, because the shows are going well and everything. Eventually, of course, somebody came along and was like, "Hey, let's put out a record. Why don't you guys do a record?" Um, and like I said, I wasn't really excited to do a record. I was really nervous because things were going so good, and we've had problems amongst ourselves before making records where the direction was all over the place and everything. And we about a year ago, we were in California. We had our first like get together for new, with the intention of writing new songs for the record. And we went to a studio in LA, and we were like in a room that was like probably smaller than this room I'm in. Like it was literally a tiny room. Like there was room for a drum kit and like two or three guys to stand and play guitar. That was it. And the four of us literally crammed into this tiny room in this studio and just started like hashing out ideas. And there was one or two things that came out of that I thought were pretty good, but mostly I just didn't feel that what we were working on together was like it. I didn't feel like that was like it. When I left LA, I was kind of discouraged and I was a little worried because, everybody was just, amongst the band and our management, everybody was like, got to do a record, got to do a record. And I left LA feeling like it's going to be really hard to do a record because, I mean, I did not, I mean, I didn't love what we came up with on that first writing session together. Um, but as the months went on, that stuff kind of fell by the wayside. And, I was home here in New Jersey. I'm sitting in my studio right now. This is my studio. And, I just kind of had an idea that like, and I shared it with the guys. I said, look, we can we can do whatever we want. I mean, Biohazard always played a variety of styles of music, but there is something very unique and cool that we do that is uniquely Biohazard. There's like we were one of those bands that kind of like you could listen to like a minute of a song, 30 seconds of a song, and you're like, oh, that's Biohazard style. There was a certain style to what we did. And it's good when a band has that, that signature like imprint of their style. And I just said to the guys, I was like, look, man, I got a bunch of song ideas. Check it out. Listen, I sent it to everybody. And I said, fellas, we just got to really do what we do best. I don't think we have to be worried about what any other band is doing. I don't think we have to worry about, what the kids are going to think or anything like that. Like, it just got to the point where it was like our discussions about new music just kind of were like, you know what? Let's not worry about anything. Let's just do what we do best. And as long as we're excited about it, and as long as we're putting all our energy into it and feeling positive about it, then it's going to be what it is. That's all we can do. Because if we don't do that, and if we do something where we're trying to create something like that somebody else wants to hear, that's never going to work. You know what I mean? When artists do that, when they try to make the record that everybody wants them to make, it always sucks. You know what I mean? You just leave the artist alone to kind of flesh things out on their own and go with whatever is exciting and inspiring. And that usually turns out to be the best stuff. And that was what happened with us. It took a minute to kind of like find our footing again as far as the direction of the songs. But once we had all heard a song or two that was like along those lines, where it just came from pure inspiration, no outside influence, no nothing, just like straight up old style. This is what we do. This is what we do best. Fuck it. Then the song started coming fast and furious after that. It was just like one song after another, just rolled out real quick. And to me, it just feels like that's like the most natural way to do things. Just whatever inspires you. This is what, in the beginning when we were writing songs, in 1990, it was whatever inspired us, is whatever got us excited. It didn't matter what a manager was telling us or a record company was telling us or 50,000 other bands were telling us, "Oh, this is what you guys should do to make it cool." It was all us. And on this record, it was just like, I guess kind of naturally we kind of circled back to that place of like not listening to anybody else and just doing what was truly inspirational. And that's where the songs came from. That's what I think makes like Divided We Fall, a more cohesive and powerful deep record than some of the ones we did more recently. You know what I mean? Like, it's just more of a Biohazard record to me.
Yeah.
It's funny that you said you don't think it sounds so much like classic Biohazard. I do think it sounds like classic Biohazard with an edge, with a more modern edge, of course. I think the production has a lot to do with that as well, with Matt's production on the record. But yeah, I mean, we can't keep writing songs about growing up in Brooklyn and everything else. I mean, none of us live there anymore. I'm raising my own kids. You know what I mean? So, you know, we all are. So it's like, you can't write about that kid stuff anymore. So the subject matter certainly changed too. But yeah, I'm just really proud of the way we did it with this record. Um, and I think the songs are great.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to hand it to you as well. I'm a drummer myself. And, when I was coming up, like early high school age, when I was warming up, there were certain drummers I went to. Bill
Mhm.
Ward was on the top of the list for me. But a lot of, guys like Louie from Carnivore was another one.
Great.
Becky from the Lunatics, and definitely a lot of your work on the first two records. Just your fills on Scarred for Life, for example. Kind of
Thanks.
got my groove going when I had to get inspired to go do something. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so I gotta tell you, your drumming on this record is really superb. I think you've arrived at a wonderful place as a player on this record. Specifically when I heard Word to the Wise, I had to play
Hmm.
it back a few times in a row because I was really digging what you were doing. There's different stuff going on. So, again, going back to the fact that Biohazard, has a 35-year history. You've been a consistent player all that time. And, everybody's getting a little older, and there's tour schedules and commitments, things like that. For you, what's been the key to not only keeping the ball in the air as a player, but, finding new things places to go with your playing at this point?
Yeah, again, it goes back to just pure inspiration. Like, you know, it's really easy when you've been playing an instrument for a very long time to kind of get stale and keep doing the same things over and over and over again. And I definitely had that happen. Like there was a bunch of years ago, um, I probably went like 2 years without touching the drums. Like after like the end of Biohazard, whatever, um, I would say from like, yeah, probably 2 years, like from like 16 to like 2018. I barely played the drums at all. Just didn't. I was just bored with drumming. I was bored with like uh music. I was just kind of like burnt out. And it wasn't I came to realize later it wasn't the music, because the music still gets me excited. It was just like everything else attached to it was like a bummer. The band had fallen apart, and people weren't getting along, and it was all those other elements that kind of like spoiled it for me. And projecting that on my instrument, on the drums, like it kept me from wanting to go play the drums. Um, but I mean, nowadays I play drums more now than I ever have. It's really important for me to be at my best, and I want to improve, and I'm really inspired now. Um, I've just been discovering other things about drumming just by playing so much, and I feel like a little kid again doing it. I feel like I'm like kind of in the same place now that I was in when I was like in my like middle teen years when I was learning how to play the drums, like and really like practicing things a lot. I was never much of a studier when it came to drumming. You know what I mean? Like I had a drum teacher when I was about 12 years old, 13 years old. Just some jazz drummer, big band jazz drummer in Brooklyn. And he used to come to my house and like, teach me things. And it was interesting and it opened up my mind to a lot of things. And then when I was around 18, I had a drum teacher on Kings Highway in Brooklyn who was a big influence. He was like more of like a fusion kind of drummer. Um, and that kind of opened up my mind a lot. And then of course Biohazard happened, and it was just like it threw me into that whole style of concentrating more on like punk rock kind of drumming and like hardcore beats and all that stuff. Yeah, nowadays I just feel like just very inspired, very like excited to play the drums every day, and the songs really like woke something up in me. Like hearing the songs just kind of like, and it always used to do that when I would hear a riff that I love that one of the guys would do, or somebody would be playing guitar in the room and I'd hear something cool. I would just immediately go to like whatever feel was there. And that I love those moments of when we're creating those kind of things and structuring the songs. So on this record, yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. There was room for a little more creative type drumming. I didn't want to do the same thing I always do, and in some parts of the record I do. But yeah, I just practiced really hard to kind of make it interesting and keep it fresh at the same time, I guess. Does that answer your question? Because I went off on a million tangents there.
No, it's cool. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And as I said it, and I'll tell the viewer, because this video will post before the album comes out. If you've loved Biohazard all along, or you haven't heard them in a while, haven't visited them, this is the album to check out because it's the best elements of Biohazard plus these new shades that I'm really excited about. Very,
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you saying that because
yeah,
I'm really I think it's a great record. I think we did the best we could. You know what I mean? I think it's the band at our best nowadays. A great representation of where we're at.
definitely. Obviously, with the record coming out, there's always a tour to support it. So I wanted to ask you, because I know seeing some things online, there's been word of some cancellations and some things going on behind the scenes. The current status of this tour.
Well, we had a tour booked for a couple weeks long, and we left the last week. We did a bunch of the shows, but something happened. We had a big business upheaval where we hired new management and everything else. A big mess. But in the midst of all that, about 2 weeks of shows got canceled, and it was kind of sudden, and it was kind of like a weird situation that happened. Really, a very odd, strange situation that I don't want to get too deep into right now. But it really sucked that it had to be canceled. We didn't want to cancel anything. Just to just to be like totally transparent, we weren't canceling nothing. I mean, we go on the road, we go do what we got to do. And Biohazard has always been a band that in one town will have a whole bunch of kids show up, and then inexplicably the next town over we might not have very many kids, and it's just kind of like random and crazy all the time. But we still plow through all our shows, and we love touring, we love performing, so we've always been like a hard touring band, so we don't cancel nothing, and we didn't want to cancel this, but it got canceled, and not totally, just a part of the tour. um we're starting up again in Pontiac with the same lineup, Swollen Teeth, Bayway, Onyx, Biohazard. And yeah, it's just a little shorter now, which sucks. I mean, we're missing like a whole part of the country right there, but we're gonna make it up and reschedule. It's really not such a big deal. I know when these things happen, people like to say, "Oh, they suck anyway. Who wants to go see them? Those guys are jerk offs." Blah blah blah. There was nobody gonna go anyway. All this bullshit. But it's just like if people knew the truth of what it was like in this business, cancellations happen all the time. Things happen all the time. It wasn't such a big deal. I guess because it was just poorly handled because we were in the middle of hiring new management, restructuring our business, and it kind of very bad timing the way it all happened. And it came on very suddenly. We were already on the road in a bus. You know what I mean? So it was really sucks for us too. Um, but we're going to reschedule everything and make it all up, and it's going to be just fine.
Cool.
So
Cool. Right on.
yeah, we got plenty more touring coming up.
Yeah. Well, it's better to wait and do it right than go
Yeah,
out there with a bunch of problems.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like I said, we're starting up again October 23rd in Pontiac, near Detroit, and then we're going into Canada for a couple of shows, and then we're coming back down, doing Brooklyn, doing the Starland in New Jersey, doing Pennsylvania, doing uh, Connecticut, New Haven, a bunch of shows. So,
Excellent. Excellent. I know we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and the one thing
mhm,
I've learned is, particularly with, what we'll call New York hardcore, the
yeah,
longer you're around, the smaller the world gets, right? And
yeah,
we were chatting about our mutual friend Drew Stone. Shout out to Drew.
yeah. Shout
Um,
out to Drew.
and I thought to ask you, 'cause I know there was a little bit of talk, somewhat recently, actually maybe a year or two ago, so not so recently, but there was some idea about a Biohazard documentary coming out that Drew is going to be a part of.
Mhm.
Any status update on that and where things are going?
Well, first of all, because you know Drew, but we have a long history with Drew Stone.
Right.
Drew is a great archivist. Is that the word? Archivist,
Yeah.
um, of our history and just like hardcore history, music history. He's always been around with a camera in his hand. He's always been a very charismatic kind of interviewer kind of guy. He's always been put himself in situations to capture unique things, and he was around us a lot in the early part of our career. And so, I mean, I don't think we could make a documentary without involving Drew Stone. You know what I mean? He was there for so many of the crucial moments in the history of the band along the way. He would have to be involved. So a while ago, we had the idea of doing something. Drew has all the footage, and it was just like, hey, man, let's do this. So we started putting it together, and it's still a work in progress. We want to make something that's really comprehensive, really covering the history of the band. And, it's been since the late 1980s, you know, so there's a lot of history to cover. And we were lucky enough to have Drew there for a lot of it in the beginning. So there's a ton of footage. He's got everything. So, um, one day it's going to come out, excuse me, come out. I don't know when exactly, but hopefully soon. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen for sure. I
Cool.
just don't know when it's going to happen, but we're excited. I mean, we filmed a lot of new footage for it also. Some really cool interview footage. We went back to Lemore's in Brooklyn and sat on the steps and had a talk there. And it's going to come out. It's going to be good. If
Right.
you're a Biohazard fan, it'll be a cool thing, a good chronicle of our history.
Right on. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's going to want to see that because
Yeah.
a lot of history there.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, we were kind of getting close to it being finished, and then some things came up, but I think it's going to get done soon, sooner rather than later.
right on. Very cool. Very cool. Staying with Drew for a minute. I know
Yeah,
he brought this up when he had you guys on his podcast, the New York Hardcore Chronicles. But I wanted to bring it up here because I mentioned Bill from Sabbath, and Bill's a pal. He's a wonderful guy. And I know there was this cool incident which Drew was a part of back in the 90s when you guys were actually shooting your video for your cover of After Forever. Lo and
yeah.
behold, Bill Ward ends up in the video. So I got to ask you, I mean, that's like serendipity extreme,
Yeah,
right? I mean, how did that all kind of unfold for you?
that was the craziest shit. I mean, for me, Bill Ward is like I mean, like you said, that's your guy, Bill Ward. For me, it's the same. It's like, when I was 4 years old, I was practicing along to Bill Ward, playing along to Black Sabbath. And, John Bonham, Bill Ward, Buddy Rich, these are my favorite drummers. Neil Peart, Peart Peart. Um, these are my favorite drummers. These are the most influential drummers to me. And Bill, we like you said, we did the After Forever cover for the Nativity in Black record back in like 1994, 1995, whenever that was. And we were in LA to shoot the video and film some stuff. And I'm up in the hotel room one afternoon, and Drew calls my room and he's like, "Yo, you got to get downstairs right now. Bill Ward is in the lobby of the hotel." And I was like, "What?" And like we all ran downstairs, and there he was, Bill Ward. I met him once before that, but never really had a good talk with him, never really spent time with him. And it was so cool to like catch him. He was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be in the video." I was like hugging him, like literally, like, "I love you, man." Like it was just so amazing to see him, man. He's just an incredibly kind, nice man. And I don't know if he remembers it or not, but it was a big moment for me,
Yeah.
hanging out with Bill, getting him in the video and stuff. Just such a great drummer, just such a huge influence on me, you know, such a huge influence. It was great to see him playing drums at the back to the beginning at the that last Black Sabbath show. It was great that he was back there on the kit because I knew all along he could do it, and I wished that he was on that last Black Sabbath record. I really wish they could have done that as the original band because he's got the swing for that. Bill Ward was the guy. He's got that feel, and he still plays that way. Drummers like that are literally a dying breed.
Yeah.
I want to bring that back. I want to bring that back. This new stuff with all the fake drums and all the fake triggers and all that stuff, it all sounds the same to me.
I was just about to say that. I know
Yeah,
immediately when it's triggered. It's just,
yeah,
it's like
yeah. All that stuff, it takes away the drummer's dynamic to me. I mean, I've heard it done very, very well, and it can be done very, very well, and still keep the feel. I'm not against anything. Like there are no rules for me in music, but just nothing sounds better than when you have a good drummer on a good drum set, nicely tuned in a good room with the band, and just let him do his feel, let him do his thing, let him just roll with it. I think that's always going to give it the best power, the best energy. And on our record, on the Divided We Fall record, it's like if you talk to Matt Hyde, he'll tell you there's no drum editing on the whole thing, man. There's nothing. Like we didn't really edit anything on the drums. Those are all like live one or two take, performances of every single song that we got. We banged it out. It was just like we just banged right through it. It's as close as you can get to making a live record. I mean, we overdubbed the vocals, we overdubbed the guitars and stuff after the fact. Some stuff we kept, but the drums were all live, no triggers, no samples, and there's no lining up to the grid. There's nothing like that. I love that. I want to bring that back. Drummers like Bill Ward, John Bonham, those bands sounded great because the drummer was the grid. They weren't looking at a computer grid. The drummer was the grid. Listen to him. If he was a good drummer, he made it sound solid. So yeah, great drummers, man. I love the old drummers. Nothing like it. It really made music interesting and unique. Now everything sounds the same.
Yeah, it does. And it's been a long time since I've heard a record because I'm on kind of a little bit of a break from playing myself. I've been
Yeah.
for a while. But when I listen to Word to the Wise, I'm like, shit, I gotta get behind a kit and see if I can fucking do that. It's like, so, it's
Yeah, I
definitely
love
good to
that
hear.
song. That's one of my favorite songs on the record. Word to the Wise. It's a
Yeah,
good one.
yeah, it
Intense.
really is. And yeah, you lit a fire under me to get behind a kit again and see, where I can take it, man. Because
Hey,
I gotta say, the playing is top notch on this record.
thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
You got to
definitely.
get playing, man. Don't let
Yeah,
it don't let it die. You got to keep it going, man.
Yeah,
Gotta play.
funny enough, I got a call from an old band last night about getting the band back together. So we'll see what
Nice.
happens. But you know,
Nice.
I wanted to kind of look at the future as well. Right now there's a lot going on with Biohazard. You've got this tremendous past, as you've said. The four of you are still on the planet. You're back playing together after a pretty long stretch. Uh,
Mhm.
what's your biggest hope for Biohazard moving forward?
Um, it would be great to just continue to play together, to stay friends, stay brothers, keep the family together. We have a great connection, the four of us. Sometimes things get a little crazy and we lose track of things. But I mean, we've all been friends since we were like kids. And when you're in your 50s, it's like hard to keep those old friendships alive. It's hard. It's hard to keep it together. People get old, people get cranky, people get, opinionated, they get grumpy. It's hard to keep that all together, but I just hope we can continue to like get along. And as long as we're getting along, we're going to continue to do the band in some way, shape, or form. Maybe we won't tour like 8, 10 months a year like we used to, but I think we'll always do some significant touring and always want to be, playing shows and always want to be part of something exciting on the road. You know what I mean? Um, for me, after COVID happened, and I think for many, many people, it kind of put like life in like a different perspective. And up until that point, I was just kind of like getting along or whatever. And then, um, my mom passed away, in like 3 years ago. And that and COVID and a couple other things that happened. Scott Koenig, our original manager, passed away. Some friends passed away. It just put my life in a different kind of perspective. And it was just that time that Evan and I had started speaking again. We hadn't talked to each other for all these years. And, a little bit of chatter was starting to come around like, hey, maybe the four of us should talk about playing again. And it just made me feel like, you know what? This is my contribution to society. Like, this is what I do. Like, some people, like Elon Musk does rockets and amazing things, and some people will come up with a cure or a vaccine for a disease and save the world. Me, I just, on some level, I play music and I play with a band and I play drums, and it brings me happiness. And I think in some way, if it inspires other people, it's worth doing. And I think this is my mission in life. And it's what makes me happiest, as something to do. It's like the thing that I do that makes me the happiest, aside from like my family time and everything else. So I decided a couple years ago, like, I'm just going to stick with this no matter what happens. But I really hope I can just continue to do it with Biohazard because we have something unique amongst us.
Yeah,
And I've played with a lot of other people, but what we have, the four of us, is pretty unique. And I like it. So I
yeah,
hope we can keep it going for as long as possible.
right on, right on.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I mentioned at the start that I saw you play about 35 years ago. First two hardcore bands I ever saw live were you and Agnostic Front.
Wow.
And it really stayed with me because I was a young kid. Like mom drove me to the show and sat in the parking lot, that kind of deal. And I
Yeah.
didn't know if this was a scene that would be accepting. I heard the records, but I didn't really know the scene. And
Right.
what stood out for me was in the case of VF, Roger and Stigma were out in the audience around talking to people. All four of you guys were too. This wasn't like seeing Bon Jovi at the Meadowlands where you're half a mile away. You guys were right there in the thick of it, which was really impressive. Also impressive was the fact that you guys were all cool. I met all of you back then when I was 12, 13 years old, and you all gave me the time of day, as Stigma and Roger did. I told them this last year. 35 years later, I'm doing what I'm doing today because of the fact that you guys and AF were cool to me back then. Had you guys been jerk offs, I wouldn't have bothered.
Yeah.
But so I appreciate that
Well, it's funny that you say that about AF, which was not to cut you off, but I got to interject. When we first came around, right? a lot of the old New York bands, the original first wave, like Agnostic Front, a lot of those bands didn't really consider us to be a hardcore band. We were from Brooklyn. We had two guys with long hair in the band, you know, and it was a different thing going on in Brooklyn. We had L'Amour's, that was our club. We played CB's, but L'Amour's was our club. Vinny and Roger and all the guys in Agnostic Front at that time, and still to this day, they're all the greatest people, but they always accepted us. Like they always were like, yeah, we'll put you guys on some shows. Like early on, Agnostic Front went out of their way to put us on shows with them early on. And they allowed us to hang out with them. They allowed us to like, I remember Roger calling us and being like, hey guys, come sing background vocals on One Voice, the record One Voice. And I remember going up to Rhode Island and we sang background vocals on that whole record. Like they were so accepting of us, and they don't judge anybody. Like those guys are just the original OG best guys ever. And they're still that way now. They are gentlemen and just the best people, like you said. So for us, they inspired us also. Like seeing those guys, the way they were so open and cool with everybody. They didn't care where you came from. They were just accepting and welcoming us into the scene was so inspirational for us. And I'm glad you picked up on that because that's something I say all the time.
Yeah.
AF, Roger and Vinny, and all those guys were so awesome with us back then, and Chromex too. Harley, John, Paris, they and Mackie, like they were all cool with us. There was none of that like jealousy and like fighting and all that stuff. They were all like super cool and welcoming. So we've always tried to be that way too. So sorry to interject and interrupt your version there, but I'm glad you brought that up because AF always treated us amazing.
Yeah.
And I love those guys to this day.
Yeah. And it rubbed off on me, man, because I'm doing what I'm doing all these years later because of that early exposure to those bands and the fact that it wasn't just about being, a half a mile away in arena looking at a band that's this big, And
Yeah.
to this day, I'll run into Stigma and he's the nicest, he's Uncle Vinny, right? And that taught me a hell of a lot because I always said to myself, if I ever ended up in a position where somebody would approach me, and
Hmm.
I was saying to myself, what would Biohazard do? What would AF do? And that has never steered me wrong because you guys set the template. And I appreciate the fact that you're still setting the template now, 35 years later with this new record. Provided we fall, how's that first been?
Yeah.
Provided we fall
Great.
out October 17th. Get this record, folks. When the guys come around your area, go see the shows. The record's going to blow you away. And until our paths cross again, Danny, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. Congratulations on the new album.
Thanks, man. It's a pleasure talking to you, and we'll see you soon.